Picture this. A Roman official named Gaius Laetorius stands before a shallow pit dug in the heart of the Forum Boarium, Rome's bustling cattle market. He isn't there to trade livestock. In his hands, he holds a ceremonial scroll, his voice trembling as he recites a chillingly specific prayer to the gods of the underworld. Two men and two women, captives from foreign lands, are led to the edge of the pit. They are Gauls and Greeks, enemies of the state. The crowd doesn't protest. They don't look away. Instead, they watch in silent, dreadful anticipation as the captives are forced into the hole and buried alive. This isn't a scene from a twisted nightmare. This was the reality of 216 BC, a time when Rome was on its knees. The city was gripped by terror. Their armies had been annihilated by Hannibal at Cannae, and the gods, it seemed, had abandoned them. This brutal, desperate act wasn't just punishment. It was a consecratio, a human sacrifice meant to appease enraged deities and by the city's survival with foreign blood. This dark ritual, performed in the very heart of their civilization, reveals a truth they tried to bury. When faced with annihilation, even the most lawful societies will turn to the forbidden. This horrifying public execution sets the stage for a journey into the shadows of the ancient world. This is the story of rituals so terrifying. They were spoken of only in whispers, the kinds of ceremonies that made even their own people recoil in fear. Before we descend into these forgotten rites of terror and superstition, if you enjoy uncovering the darkest secrets of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're watching from. It's fascinating that we're unearthing these unsettling stories together from all over the globe, connected by a shared fascination with the hidden horrors of our past. That sacrifice in the Forum Boarium proves one thing: the Romans were desperate, but they weren't the only ones. Across the ancient world, when the lights of civilization flickered, humanity reached for unspeakable things in the dark. The terror of the Roman ritual lay in its cold, bureaucratic precision. It wasn't a frenzied act of a mob. It was state-sanctioned, a calculated decision by the Senate and the keepers of the Sibylline books, Rome's sacred prophetic texts. When disaster struck, these books would be consulted, and sometimes their cryptic verses were interpreted as demanding the ultimate price. The victims, a Gallic man and woman and a Greek man and woman, were chosen to represent Rome's most persistent enemies. By burying them alive, the Romans believed they were symbolically burying the threats against them, transferring their city's doomed fate onto their foes. The horror was amplified by the method. Being buried alive was a punishment reserved for Vestal virgins who broke their vows of chastity, considered one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. It was a slow, suffocating death in complete darkness, a fate the Romans themselves considered profoundly terrifying. To inflict it as a sacrifice shows the sheer depth of their panic. Imagine the psychological impact on the average Roman citizen. You walk through the cattle market, a place of commerce and daily life, and you know that just beneath the cobblestones lie the bodies of people sacrificed to save you. It's a constant, grim reminder of how close your society came to collapse and the terrifying price paid to prevent it. The ritual was performed only a handful of times in Rome's long history, always at moments of extreme crisis. It was their ultimate emergency protocol, a pact with chthonic gods that left a permanent stain on the city's soul. The practice was eventually condemned and faded away, but its memory lingered as a testament to a time when the masters of the world were so afraid they resorted to burying people alive in the center of their glorious city. The fear wasn't just of the enemy at the gates. It was the fear of what they themselves were capable of. But what if the horror wasn't a public spectacle? What if it was a secret, a mystery whispered among the elite? A ritual that promised power, but at a cost that twisted the very fabric of reality. In ancient Egypt, a civilization obsessed with order and the afterlife, there existed a set of practices so dangerous they were intentionally obscured, hidden in the deepest parts of funerary texts. These weren't the common spells for a peaceful journey to the field of reeds. These were the dark arts of the necromancer. One of the most enigmatic and feared rituals involved the creation of a shabti. Normally, shabtis were small, mummy-form figurines placed in tombs to act as servants for the deceased in the afterlife. They were helpers, meant to carry out manual labor on behalf of the soul. But a darker, twisted version of this practice existed. A magician could perform a complex, forbidden rite to animate a shabdi not in the afterlife, but here, in the world of the living. This wasn't about creating a helpful servant. It was about binding a spirit, often a tormented or restless one, to the figurine, creating an entity that could be commanded to carry out the sorcerer's will. The ritual texts that hint at this process are fragmented and intentionally confusing, written in cryptic codes and arcane language. They speak of nocturnal ceremonies, of using substances like blood and lead, and of chanting names that were never meant to be spoken aloud. The goal was to bypass the laws of Ma'at, the cosmic principle of order and justice, and wrench a soul back from its path to judgment. The mystery deepens when you consider what these animated figures were used for. The fragmented spells suggest they were dispatched on errands of malice, to inflict curses, to haunt enemies, or to uncover secrets by whispering to the dead. The true horror for the Egyptians was the spiritual blasphemy of it all. They believed the afterlife was a sacred, orderly process. To trap a spirit in a clay doll, forcing it into servitude in the mortal plane, was an act of supreme evil. It doomed the bound soul, denying it peace for eternity, and it put the magician's own soul at immense risk. If the ritual was performed incorrectly, if the binding was weak, the enraged spirit could break free and turn on its would-be master. Archaeologists have found shabdi figurines that were intentionally broken or defaced, and some scholars speculate this might have been a way to decommission one of these rogue entities, to sever the connection and end the nightmare. The fear surrounding these practices was so profound that they were never depicted on tomb walls or spoken of openly. They were the hidden underbelly of Egyptian magic, a terrifying "what if" that haunted the quiet corridors of the necropolis, a mystery of what could be done if one dared to defy the gods and enslave the dead. Another chilling mystery comes from the misty shores of the British Isles, from the heart of Celtic and Druidic culture. The Romans, who were no strangers to brutality, wrote with a particular sense of dread about a figure they called the Wicker Man. According to Julius Caesar and other Roman sources, the Druids, the high-ranking professional class in Celtic society, used these giant, man-shaped effigies for their most terrifying sacrifices. The structure would be woven from wicker and wood, towering over the landscape like a pagan god. Then, its hollow limbs and torso would be filled, not with offerings of grain or wine, but with living people. Criminals were the preferred victims, but if the supply ran short, innocent captives would be used instead. Once filled with screaming men, the entire structure would be set ablaze, a colossal human bonfire offered to their inscrutable gods. The mystery isn't just whether this happened, but why. Roman accounts are our primary source, and they had a vested interest in portraying the Celts as savages to justify their own conquests. For centuries, historians dismissed the Wicker Man as mere propaganda, but archaeological evidence has begun to lend a disturbing credence to these tales. Excavations of ritual sites have unearthed mass graves and evidence of large-scale ritual killing that aligns with the Roman descriptions. The Lindau Man, a bog body discovered in England, shows signs of a brutal, threefold death: bludgeoning, strangulation, and having his throat cut, a method often associated with Celtic human sacrifice. While a giant wicker effigy hasn't been found, the sheer violence of these remains suggests the Romans weren't just making things up. The deep mystery is the belief system that would demand such a thing. What kind of gods required their followers to burn people alive inside a giant statue? The Celtic world was animistic. They saw divinity in the forests, the rivers, and the earth itself. Perhaps the Wicker Man was a grotesque offering to a vegetation god, where the victims became a symbolic, and very real, sacrifice to ensure the fertility of the land. Or perhaps it was a form of mass execution, a terrifying spectacle designed to enforce social order and appease the gods of justice in one fiery, public display. We don't have the Druid side of the story. Their knowledge was oral, a sacred tradition that was never written down and was ultimately stamped out by Roman conquest. All we have are the horrified accounts of their enemies and the silent, mangled bodies pulled from the bogs. The Wicker Man remains a towering enigma, a symbol of a lost faith whose ultimate rites were so profoundly alien and terrifying that we can still only guess at their true meaning. It's a mystery woven from propaganda, archaeology, and a chilling silence. leaving us to wonder what other horrors were lost in the smoke of those ancient fires.